They make like a full-on music album, right? Like music videos, AI-generated songs in 1 week's time, right? And it's the most fun they've had creatively in the longest time. And so I think it's just super important to tell these stories of how one is able to make more fun and exciting things. And I think we'll see a lot of incredibly creative things over the next few years once the dust settles a little bit.
In today's world, how does a brand break through the noise and become iconic? Join me, Jason Harris, as I speak with the world's leading marketing experts about how they use soul and science to build an iconic brand. Think of it as EQ meeting IQ. So let's lock in and together fast forward our marketing minds on the Soul and Science podcast. Fredrik, welcome to the Soul and Science podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Proud to be here.
My first question that I always ask on every podcast is I'd love to get a little career trajectory story, how you started, how you got into what you do now.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's been 9 years now. We started the company in 2015. At the time when we started the company, I was living in Indonesia, of all places, in Jakarta. I was part of running an e-commerce company in Indonesia, which was an amazing experience, and got to work with incredible creative people all over the world, and felt that these people should move to America and be part of the American labor market and make 20 times as much. But of course, you guys are building walls and enacting tariffs and doing your thing. And so that was hard. And the internet is sort of the only hope. And we're trying to be part of that revolution of accelerating the transition to online work and giving everyone in the world access to equal opportunity.
Where were you before you moved to Indonesia?
Before Indonesia, I was in Oslo, Norway, and back here now. But been a little bit all around. Worked in consulting, did marketing stuff primarily, and really I think learned both kind of in marketing and running an e-commerce that creative is very often the bottleneck for faster growth. A lot of companies don't really invest in creative, and whenever we ran experiments in sort of like investing more in creative, we would be able to drive a ton higher ROI on Facebook and elsewhere, and that sort of was the insight for me. Kind of coming into marketing, I was always very focused on the numbers and the optimizations and the bidding and all of that kind of stuff, and then increasingly just shifted more and more over to believing in the power of storytelling and great creative.
The company started as an e-commerce company?
No, sorry.
So
a different company in Indonesia, an e-commerce company in Indonesia.
What was that company called?
It's called Solora. It's a fashion e-commerce company. It's the largest fashion e-commerce in Indonesia at the moment. Super fun experience. And then now it's obviously a totally different company. It's a sort of US-based creative company, primarily working with American customers. So yeah, important distinction to make. Then I was part of another company as well, which I built together with my current CTO, which is we tried to build a Tinder for jobs where you could swipe right or left on jobs. It's a very tech bro kind of idea, and didn't really work out. People didn't want to swipe for jobs. I think, but we pivoted it into a job portal for startups, and it's now the largest job portal for startups in the Nordics, and still operational.
So this is your third company you started?
Yeah, sort of, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And was it always called Superside, or was it called something else?
It was called something else. It started out it was called Consus in the first couple of years, and turned out that nobody in America was able to spell it, pronounce it, or remember it, and as such we had to change the name.
You know, we talk about soul and science on the podcast. Obviously, this episode is going to be about the soul and science of AI, of creative AI. I can't think of more of a soul and science company than a global creative talent company that brings tech into the talent. That's really soul and science in a nutshell right there. And you really work to create what the future will look like for brands and agencies at Superside. So give me like kind of the elevator pitch for Superside.
For sure, I think you just kind of gave the greatest elevator pitch I've heard in a long time. So
Oh, thank you.
we'll leave those words lingering a little bit. You're completely right. We're an AI-powered creative service. We're trying to help brands, primarily enterprise technology brands in the US, accelerate their creative production and their creative execution and their creative strategy using AI at every step of the way. And we built a technology platform that we spent sort of 9 years building, I guess, where we run all of our projects and where all of our designers and creatives spend a good chunk of their day. And we combine that with our own and obviously mostly other people's AI tools to deliver experiences to customers that are cheaper, faster, and hopefully better than anywhere else.
It's a global workforce, global creative workforce, right?
Yeah, so today we're 750 people in 65 different countries.
You know, I run a creative agency and it can be very subjective and resource intensive. How do you manage the brands or agencies that you work with? Obviously, tech's a big part of it, but how do you make it faster, cheaper, more efficient? Even though, it's still at the end of the day, someone has to say, I approve this, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good question, and we're always open to ideas and constantly trying to just reduce requirements and improve the speed of delivery. To us, it starts really with the brief, and the brief is where we invest the most. Typically, we see that work in or around the brief maybe constitutes 40% of a typical project for us. Not sure what is your experience, but it's crazy how much time. If you think of the brief as scoping, planning, quoting, back and forth misunderstandings, like if you do that right, it can be significantly reduced, and that's also where we're investing most of our resources in building AI tools to make an AI briefing that is hopefully better, or at least on par, at the very least much faster than a human at briefing. So trying to save a bit of time there, briefing and quoting and then subsequent scoping of projects. Then I think there's pretty significant cost savings for the customers to be achieved through high quality onboarding, where we build AI automations or just normal automations with sort of old school automation tools still works. And this is sort of particularly useful for, trends creation or ad resizing and these type of high volume use case, variant creation and these type of things.
And how do you get most of your clients, would you say?
So most of our clients come inbound on our website and book a call with our sales team. We also do some outbound, and increasingly we're also meeting people in person. For the longest time, we were sort of like, we're never going to have a sales team, like super annoying to have a sales team. Let's just have everyone sign up online and be like product led and so on. Then we started adding a sales team, but we were insisting on let's definitely not meet anyone in person, let's just all stay on the internet, and was very kind of ideological about it. And then it worked decently well throughout the pandemic. But now after the pandemic, people just have such a desire to meet in person, myself included, and so we've doubled down on events and are doing 20-30 physical events per year in 2025, primarily in New York and San Francisco. And so if any of the listeners are there, then hit me up and we'll organize an invite.
You've started a few companies now. What are you particularly good at that makes you confident you can create hit businesses?
Well, I'm not confident I can create hit businesses. I think I'm constantly paranoid and worried that the company will fall into pieces and or get sued by someone, or that our competitors will overtake us, or that all of our employees will go on strike, or I don't know. Like
A little paranoia is healthy, though, right?
I don't know if it's healthy, but might be good for business. And then secondly, I guess I'm quite good at working very hard while having that paranoia sort of at the same time, and mastering that, let's say, anxiety or whatever you call it, that fear, in some kind of channeling that in some kind of meaningful way. And I have been working, yeah, quite hard my whole life, and I'm quite good at working on boring things or fun things.
It seems like you do have a real talent for balancing fear and focus. And when you thought about creating Superside, did AI evolve the company, or did you have a vision early on that AI was going to be the kind of heartbeat of it?
I remember in 2016, because we did Y Combinator, and Sam Altman was our group partner, and
Oh, that's a pretty good foundation right there.
yeah, that was cool. And he just came up on there, and he's like, I want to lead you guys' seed round. And we was like, oh, okay, sure. How much do you think our company is worth? And he just said some number, and we did the round in like no time. 20 minutes later, we had all the other investors kind of. And so that was very easy. And then we've done subsequent funding rounds. That's been very hard. But and then a couple months later, he sort of left Y Combinator to start OpenAI, and we were like, what the hell is this AI thing? Like, that's super strange. Like, why would he leave? It seems like a very theoretical, kind of futuristic kind of thing. And and we should have, I guess, jumped on the wagon, even back then, or like earlier. But I don't know, for the longest time they were just playing Dota 2 and like StarCraft and these things. And I mean, that was fun that they could compete with a human player in StarCraft, but like, I mean, it wasn't necessarily like that useful, and we didn't see it early enough. But I think we saw it earlier than many other people in the creative services world, and we've been at it um, for a few years now, and I think that's allowed us to take the position that we have today. But yeah, still a lot of work to do.
It didn't necessarily start with AI at the center. You added that in. What was the concept before you added the AI layer?
So the concept first was a freelancer marketplace covering all sorts of sectors, which attempted to challenge Fiverr and Upwork by providing pre-qualified talent, and essentially scan all marketplace participants. And then we learned that it was very hard to drive essentially high retention in that kind of business.
High retention with staff or high retention with people hiring you?
Both. I mean, staff retention is one thing, but it's like, I don't know, marketplace like Fiverr and Upwork, there's millions of people joining, right? Like millions of people trying to find jobs on the internet. And it's fantastic that those platforms exist. But what most companies want are the top 1% of those like millions of people that are joining those platforms. And so the churn among the good people turns out to be extremely high, because they leave the platform and go work for the company direct. And so we struggle with both staff retention and, more crucially, client retention, and sort of decided at some point to pivot the business to a company fully focused on the sector we believed in the most, creative and design, and decided to build a subscription model on top of that, bring everyone on full time, and build technology for that specific use case. And nobody really believed in that pivot. We spoke to, I don't know, 60, 70, 80 VCs, the classic story, and everyone said this doesn't make any sense. And then managed to get a little bit of funding and went with it, and it's done quite well over the last few years.
Are there AI tools you limit the teams to work with, or is it sort of whatever? Is it kind of wide open?
I mean, we are not the most worried ourselves, I guess, but a lot of our clients, particularly enterprise clients, are super worried about all sorts of legal considerations, and I totally get it. Especially if you're consumer facing brand, you want to protect that. You want to have copyright, IP, like all those things. I get it. And so those brands are less permissive as to which tools that we can use, but generally speaking, it's pretty open.
Where should creative companies start when they're thinking about implementing AI? That's a very big question, I know.
Creative companies, as in agencies,
Yeah,
or
agencies.
I think they should probably start by creating a very sound legal framework for working with their customers and ensuring that their customers are on board with it. For us, that has been the biggest hurdle, to convince as many customers as possible and really ensure that they are committed to you as an AI partner, and it's just been remarkable, the inertia, and it's still there. And just to give an example, like every time a customer submits a project, they get a quote. They get two quotes. They get an AI quote, and they get a human quote, and say, I do want to do this for like $1,000, or you want to do this for $500. It's going to be exactly the same, but the $500 one will use AI. And then most of the time, enterprise, they say, no, I don't want to. We don't want to use the AI thing. We want to use the human thing. And again and again and again, we push, and we have pop-ups everywhere inside our platform, and we talk to people, we talk to our customers, we just really, really try to push everyone over, but there's such a resistance. But we've been quite successful and gotten now more than half our customers over after pushing for 18 months or so. And the reason I say it is because if you don't get your customers to change, and if you don't get then you don't get the volume, and if you don't get the volume, then you don't get the practice, and if you don't get the practice, then you're going to get uncompetitive very quickly. And so the tools themselves are, I guess, easy enough. I think most designers and creatives are able to pick up relatively quickly. The tools are getting easier. So for us, that's been the number one challenge.
What do you see a lot of companies consistently getting wrong or misunderstanding about creative talent coming together with AI?
There's a lot of uncertainty and some misconceptions about what it can and cannot do. So many of our customers, or many in the creative fields, will say it cannot do strategy. It cannot, it doesn't do taste. AI cannot do. It doesn't have taste. And then when we run kind of experiments where we say, okay, this concept and this and this and that concept, let's just, these two are AI generated, these two are human generated, let's put it all on Meta and see how it performs. Then, most of the time the AI outperforms. And so
Sure.
Clearly it has an ability to come up with strategy. Clearly it has taste. Turns out it's very hard for the AI to maybe align things, or like draw straight lines, or work with text in images, and there's like many things that it's also very bad at doing. But it's very easy to assume that the AI will kind of eat work from, let's say, quote unquote, the bottom of the pyramid, and at the top of the pyramid will be kept intact. But what we're seeing is relative, I wouldn't say necessarily random, but it's very hard to predict exactly what the AI tools will be good at. And so you have to trial and error much more than most people are currently doing. Also, when you're using the tools, very often we see people kind of get in, spend some time, they have a team, they spend 1 month, they can't figure it out. It takes a little bit of a while to break through, and the breaking through also requires just a ton of trial and error. And I think for many sort of established enterprise companies with big kind of creative design production workflows, it's very annoying and frustrating for them to change those. But it will have to be redone in a new way in this new paradigm.
One other thing is that, creatives, and you've been doing this for years now, but creatives definitely have a concern of AI potentially devaluing their work. And you had to take your team and not only go from kind of independent contractors to full time, but also from a skilled creative talent. Then you had to skill them up in AI. So you were doing a couple big changes at once, like a lot of hardcore change management in the company. Would you say in general, there was a big embrace with, okay, yeah, full time sounds awesome, and I want to learn all these AI skills? Or would you say you had to kind of bring them along with the future that you envisioned for Superside?
Yeah. And I think that the best way to inspire and convincing is by sharing your optimism and your excitement about this new technology, because there is so much amazing things that you can do, right? Like anyone that has been running boring static ad on Facebook can now produce full on video expressing their product, telling their story for the same amount of budget, right? I mean, that's cool. Like our marketing team would just say, hey, now you can have like a week to do whatever you want with, AI. It has to be with AI tools. And they go back, spend 1 week, and they make like a full-on music album, right? Like music videos, AI generated songs, in 1 week's time, right? And it's the most fun they've had creatively in the longest time. And so I think it's just super important to tell these stories of how one is able to make more fun and exciting things. And I think we'll see a lot of incredibly creative things over the next few years once the dust settles a little bit.
With so many new tools coming out, how do you determine, or who on your team determines, and maybe I'm going to mechanical, like the way I think, like we're going to use this tool, but not this tool, or we're going to be on this platform and not this platform, or that tool does something we're already paying a license for, so we don't need it. How do you determine that with the proliferation of so many tools hitting the market on a weekly basis?
Yeah, no good advice there. It's a total mess.
I love your honesty.
We talk to all of these companies. We meet with the founders. We spend a lot of money on licenses. We test a lot of things. We have an AI consulting, AI automation team that works with customers. We have an internal AI unit that works with our own transformation. They both have, big teams that spend a ton of time just looking at all of these various tools. I think in general, though, like especially when there's this technology shocks, you should sort of believe a little bit in the wisdom of the crowds, and it should be more like just have all of our hundreds of designers give them the ability to choose for themselves which tools they want to use for which project, and then sort of see which one is most popular, and not have sort of a top down decision to say, hey, we're only going to use Adobe in our company, or something like that. And the Adobe tools are all fine and good, but the market is not really at the stage where it's possible, I think, to make sort of a singular decision on a AI tool or anything like that. And so for us, we're using a lot of different things. There has sort of been a couple of things that have emerged, I guess, over the last couple of years that we use more than others, and tools that we really like. So happy to give a few shout outs.
Go ahead.
So I think one company that we really like, and they've been very helpful to us, is Krea.ai. When we did a vote inside our Slack about which tool people liked the most, it got overwhelmingly the majority of the votes. It allows you to do most of the stuff. It allows you to host custom models that are trained for customers and so on. The second thing that we really like and use for more advanced stuff is File.ai, which has been particularly useful for us when it's a little bit more advanced and larger scale productions, when it's required to sort of train a custom model specifically on the customer's brand or illustration style or something like that.
Awesome. For marketers that are trying to stay ahead on AI, is there anything you recommend that they think about or focus on?
For marketers, I mean, I think the big wave right now is using all of the various AI analytics tools that are springing up. It's a pretty intense competition. We're also in that competition ourselves with our own tool, superads.ai, which allows you to connect your Facebook, LinkedIn, Google ads, and then get AI insights and AI recommendations on your creative and what you can do better. There's probably 10 or 15 competitors in that space doing various different things. It's at the moment very kind of cost effective pricing, pretty rich feature set, and quite amazing what you can achieve. And so that would be my number one tip, to really take advantage of all those cool startups coming on stream.
And what advice would you give entrepreneurs that might be starting or thinking about starting in the space?
In the AI and creative space?
Yeah, AI creative space, or broader. I could go broader because you've done a few companies now, but it seems like each company you're trying to disrupt a more traditional way of doing something. Just any advice if you think an entrepreneur is trying to think of starting something?
I think it's a fantastic industry right now. It's such a big market. Professional services globally is, trillions of dollars. It's the largest market, right? Like 70% of the Western economies are services of some kind. And then let's say half of them are knowledge work, like white collar professional type stuff that can be disrupted with some kind of digital intelligence. And, going into that field and trying to disrupt this is going to be very, very interesting. And I think the next wave of technological revolution, I think what we see is a lot of kind of young, relatively inexperienced entrepreneurs, like myself, in at least a few years ago now, getting older and so on. But I think a lot of young entrepreneurs in particular go after kind of consumer SMB space and try, and so it tends to be like the market tends to be a little bit crowded for like the type of AI that's like, we will make your ads in an automated way, and then they spit out some like pretty crappy ads for some like product that you can sell on Shopify, like there a lot of people have that idea, and there's probably, I don't know, 50 of those AI automated things, and they get a lot of traction and a lot of hype, and people are like, okay, I should go in that direction. At the same time, there's even bigger, or maybe even much bigger, opportunity in enterprise.
Yeah.
And in sort of automating very specific workflows. And I think the advice that I would give is for people to really try to get very deep on a quite niche enterprise use case, like, I don't know, like some specific subset of video or transcreation or something. And if you know that the enterprise is doing it, it's billions of dollars of global spend, and you can probably make a very, very custom AI solution to do it. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, that's good advice. Do you have a mantra or a quote that you live by or that you think about?
I don't, but I was discussing the other day with some friends whether I should get a tattoo to write down something that I will remind myself of every day. And I think for me right now, and it might change, that's the problem with tattoos, that you kind of regret it. Like,
I don't regret
a few. And so I was thinking to write down this Zen Buddhist quote, which says, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water.
I love that.
To me, I mean, I'm by no means even remotely close to enlightenment. But I think it's important for me to realize that nothing will change. There is no secrets to life. There is. It's not like if I succeed with this company, and then all will be fine. I have to be fine now.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because I have a lot of tattoos, but I have a Soto Zen Buddhist phrase tattooed here, which is Ichigo Ichi, which is this idea of, this moment will never happen again. I'm not going to interview you at the same time, at the same place, talking about the same thing ever again. So the concept is similar of being here now is another way to say it, Don't think about what's next or something you need to accomplish and you'll finally receive enlightenment or you'll get to the perfect place, because that doesn't happen. So similar phrase.
Amazing.
Yeah. So anyway, thanks for being on the podcast.
Amazing. Well, thanks a lot for having me, and I'm excited to listen to the podcast.
Yeah. Chop wood and carry water. You did a lot of chopping today. Soul and Science is a Mechanism podcast produced by Maggie Bowles, Ryan Tillotson, and Lily Jablonski. The show is edited by Daniel Ferreira with theme music by Kyle Merritt. And I'm your host, Jason Harris.